The gunshot split the silence of the Montana sunset like a thunderclap, causing Sophia Adler to jerk her head up from the letter she'd been reading. Through the lace curtains of her bedroom window, she could see her father's silhouette on the porch, shotgun aimed skyward. She knew what that signal meant. Another suitor was coming to call the 3rd this month. Montana Territory, 1876. The year that should have been filled with national centennial celebrations had instead brought nothing but grief to the Adler household. First, her mother's passing in the spring, then the ranch falling into debt, and now her father's desperate scheme to marry her off to whoever offered the most meager price for their struggling cattle operation. "Sophia!" her father bellowed from downstairs. "Make yourself presentable. Judge Wilson and his son are arriving within the hour." She crumpled the letter in her fist, a note from her childhood friend, now teaching at a women's college back east, an opportunity that seemed increasingly impossible with each passing day. "I heard you, father," she called back, rising reluctantly from her writing desk. At 22, Sophia had long resigned herself to eventual marriage, but she'd always imagined it would be on her terms, to someone she chose. Not some hastily arranged business transaction disguised as matrimony. She smoothed her skirts and pinched color into her cheeks, studying her reflection in the small mirror. Her honey-brown hair was coming loose from its pins, and determination burned in her hazel eyes. She would endure this meeting as she had the others, but she wouldn't surrender her future so easily. Downstairs, Franklin Adler paced the worn floorboards of their ranch house, a once proud home now showing signs of neglect. "There she is," he said when Sophia appeared. "Wilson's boy is a good match. His father's the territorial judge, and they've got mining interests near Helena. They can save this place." "And what will I be in this arrangement? Simply part of the inventory?" Sophia asked, keeping her voice steady despite her rising anger. "Along with the cattle and the barn?" Her father's weathered face hardened. "Don't start with your fancy ideas. Times are hard. A woman needs protection out here. Judge Wilson's offering to clear our debts and keep you in fine dresses. Many girls would be grateful." "I'm not asking for fine dresses," Sophia replied. "I'm asking to have some say in who I marry." "That's enough," Franklin snapped as hoofbeats sounded outside. "They're here. Put on a smile and be thankful someone's willing to take you with the ranch in such a state." The words stung like a slap. Sophia forced herself to stand straight as her father opened the door to greet Judge Wilson, a portly man in his 60s with a self-important air, and his son Emmett, a pale, thin man closer to 30 than 20, with small eyes that assessed Sophia like she was a mare at auction. Across town, in the bustling settlement of Silver Creek, Hayes Kincaid dismounted his stallion outside the telegraph office. At 28, he cut an impressive figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and a quiet confidence earned through years of hard work. Unlike many cowboys passing through, Hayes owned his own spread, the Double K Ranch, built from nothing over 7 years of backbreaking labor. "Got something for you, Kincaid?" the telegraph operator called as Hayes entered. "Came in this morning from Denver." Hayes removed his hat, revealing dark hair in need of a trim, and accepted the telegram. He read it twice, a slow smile spreading across his face. The cattle broker had accepted his price. After years of careful breeding, his herd was finally recognized as among the finest in the territory. The sale would mean security and the chance to expand. "Good news?" asked Sheriff Miller, who'd entered behind him. "The best," Hayes replied, tucking the telegram into his vest pocket. "That Denver buyer is paying top dollar for my shorthorns. I'll be driving 50 head south next month." "Congratulations," the sheriff said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You earned it. Not many men could turn a plot of empty prairie into what you've built." "Speaking of building," Hayes said, "I'll need supplies. Thought I'd ride over to Adler's place tomorrow. See about buying some of his timber now that I can afford proper fencing for the north pasture." The sheriff's expression clouded. You might want to hold off. Franklin Adler's in a bad way since his wife passed. Word is he's deep in debt. Been trying to marry off his daughter to settle accounts. Marry her off? Hayes frowned. Sophia Adler? I remember her from town socials. Bright girl. Always had her nose in a book. Same one. Apparently, he's entertaining Judge Wilson and his son today. Wilson's offered to clear Adler's debts in exchange for the girl and control of what's left of the ranch. A flash of indignation shot through Hayes. He'd known Franklin Adler for years, a proud man, but fair in business. The thought of him bartering his own daughter left a sour taste in Hayes's mouth. That's no way to treat family, Hayes said quietly, especially not a daughter like Sophia. Hard times make for hard choices, the sheriff replied with a shrug. Not everyone's been as successful as you, Hayes. Hayes nodded thoughtfully, replacing his hat. I think I'll still ride out there tomorrow. Been meaning to speak with Adler anyway. Back at the Adler ranch, dinner with the Wilsons had progressed from uncomfortable to unbearable. Judge Wilson dominated the conversation with political opinions and self-aggrandizing stories, while Emmett's gaze rarely left Sophia's bodice. When his foot deliberately brushed against hers under the table for the third time, she'd had enough. Would you excuse me for a moment? She asked, rising before anyone could object. In the kitchen, Sophia braced herself against the wash basin, breathing deeply. Through the doorway, she could hear her father's desperate attempts to impress the judge, talking up the ranch's potential while downplaying its current struggles. She'll make Emmett a fine wife, the judge's voice carried clearly. Bit headstrong perhaps, but nothing a firm hand won't correct. Sophia's a good girl, her father replied. Educated too. Her mother insisted on it. Reads Shakespeare and such. Reading won't keep a home or bear children, Emmett's nasal voice interjected. But she's comely enough. I'll take her off your hands for $500 and assumption of your banknotes. Sophia froze, heart pounding in her chest. $500. That's what her future was worth to these men. $700, her father countered weakly, and you'll need to hire on my foreman. He knows this land better than anyone. $600, final offer, the judge said firmly. And we'll consider the foreman. The girl comes with the deed signing next week. Emmett's eager to start his married life. Sophia backed away from the door, bile rising in her throat. Next week. They were planning to hand her over next week like a piece of property. She'd heard enough. Slipping through the back door, she fled to the barn, her mind racing with desperate thoughts of escape. The following morning, Hayes Kincaid rode toward the Adler ranch, the fresh mountain air filling his lungs as his horse picked its way along the familiar trail. He'd slept poorly, troubled by thoughts of Sophia Adler's predicament. Though they'd never been more than acquaintances, he remembered her clearly from community gatherings, her quick wit, her kind manner with children, the way she'd organized a lending library in the back of the general store. As the Adler homestead came into view, Hayes noticed unusual activity near the barn. Franklin Adler stood red-faced in the yard, gesticulating wildly at his foreman and two ranch hands who appeared to be searching the property. Hayes approached cautiously, calling out a greeting as he dismounted. Kincaid, Franklin acknowledged tersely. If you're here on business, it'll have to wait. My daughter's gone missing. Missing? Hayes asked, instantly alert. Since when? Last night, the foreman, Miguel Reyes, interjected. Miss Sophia never came down for breakfast. Her bed wasn't slept in, and her traveling bag is gone. Franklin scowled. She's upset about the arrangement with Judge Wilson, throwing a tantrum like a child instead of facing her responsibilities. Hayes's jaw tightened at Franklin's dismissive tone, but he kept his expression neutral. Any idea which way she might have headed? We found tracks heading east toward Silver Creek, Miguel said. But the morning stage has already departed, if she caught it. She's got nowhere to go and barely any money, Franklin interrupted. She'll come to her senses once she gets hungry. Meanwhile, I've got the Wilson deal to salvage. They're coming to sign papers tomorrow, expecting a bride as part of the bargain. Hayes felt his opinion of Franklin Adler rapidly deteriorating. I'd be happy to help look for her, he offered, addressing Miguel rather than Franklin. I know the trails around here better than most. That's mighty neighborly, Miguel replied. We could use another set of eyes. Franklin waved a dismissive hand. Do what you want, Kincaid. I've got to draft a letter to the judge explaining this delay. He stalked back toward the house, shoulders hunched with frustration. He's not himself, Miguel said quietly once Franklin was out of earshot. Not since Mrs. Adler passed. The debts, the drought, it's all weighing on him. That's no excuse for selling his daughter, Hayes responded, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Miguel's dark eyes studied Hayes thoughtfully. You know Miss Sophia well? Not particularly, Hayes admitted, but well enough to know she deserves better than being traded like cattle. He turned, scanning the horizon. You said the track's headed east? Toward town? Sigh. But she's smart. She might have started that way to throw us off. Hayes nodded, an idea forming. I'm going to check the old line shack up near Logan's Creek. If she's hiding, that would be a good spot sheltered, near water, and few people remember it's there. I can come with you, Miguel offered. No need, Hayes replied. You keep searching the main routes. If she's trying to leave the territory, that's where you'll find her. As Hayes rode toward the foothills, his mind kept returning to Sophia. The judge's son was known to be a cold, calculating man more interested in acquiring property than in the happiness of a wife. The thought of someone as vibrant as Sophia trapped in such a marriage made his blood boil. The line shack came into view just as the midday sun reached its peak. It was a simple structure, built years ago for cowboys tending the far reaches of neighboring ranches. Abandoned now, it still provided basic shelter. Hayes approached cautiously, noting fresh hoofprints in the soft earth near the door. Hello? He called, remaining mounted. Anyone there? Silence answered him. He dismounted slowly, hand resting lightly on his revolver not for use, but as a precaution. The mountains harbored various dangers, from desperate outlaws to hungry predators. The cabin door creaked open before he reached it, and Sophia Adler appeared in the doorway, a rifle trained steadily on his chest. That's far enough, Mr. Kincaid, she said, her voice remarkably composed despite the shadows of exhaustion beneath her eyes. Hayes stopped, raising his hand slightly. I'm not here to force you back, Miss Adler. Then why are you here? Suspicion laced her tone. Did my father send you? No, madam. I offered to help look, but I'm not reporting back to him. He gestured toward the cabin. May I approach? I give you my word, I won't try anything untoward. Sophia studied him for a long moment before lowering the rifle slightly. You can water your horse at the stream. Then we'll talk. Hayes nodded, leading his stallion to the nearby creek. He took his time, giving her space to collect herself. When he returned, she'd set aside the rifle and was sitting on a rough-hewn bench outside the cabin door. How did you know to look here? She asked as he approached. Educated guess, he replied, settling on a stump across from her. It's where I'd go if I needed to disappear for a while. Close enough to survive, far enough to stay hidden. She nodded, a hint of grudging respect in her expression. What happens now? That depends on what you want, Miss Adler. Surprise flickered across her face. What I want hasn't seemed to matter much lately. It matters to me, Hayes said simply. Sophia stared at him, searching for deception in his steady gaze and finding none. The silence stretched between them, broken only by birdsong and the gentle rustle of pine needles in the breeze. I want freedom, she finally said. Not to be traded like a prize heifer to settle my father's debts. Judge Wilson's son looks at me like I'm already his property. She shuddered visibly. I'd rather take my chances alone than face that future. Hayes nodded slowly. Your father mentioned the Wilsons are coming tomorrow to sign papers. And to collect me, Sophia added bitterly. $600. That's what my father agreed to. $600, an assumption of his banknotes. Hayes couldn't contain his indignation. That's unconscionable. It's business, Sophia replied, though her trembling hands betrayed her distress, at least according to them. No, Hayes said firmly. It's not business. It's wrong. Plain and simple. Sophia studied him curiously. Why do you care, Mr. Kincaid? We've barely exchanged more than pleasantries at town gatherings. It was a fair question. Hayes removed his hat, running a hand through his hair as he considered his answer. I believe a person's worth isn't measured in dollars and cents, and I believe marriage should be about partnership, not ownership. He met her gaze directly. Also, I remember how you stood up to those fellows harassing Mrs. Chen at her laundry last year. Not many would have done that. A ghost of a smile touched Sophia's lips. You remember that? It was admirable. Hayes replied honestly. Showed character. Sophia's expression sobered. Character doesn't count for much when you're a woman with no money and no prospects. That's where you're wrong, Hayes said. It counts for everything with the right people. He hesitated, then continued. I may have a solution if you're willing to hear it. I'm listening. I just secured a major cattle contract. My ranch is finally turning a real profit. I need timber for fencing, which is why I was riding to your father's place originally. He leaned forward. What if I offered to buy your father's timber rights and loan him enough to clear his most pressing debts? It would give you time to find another solution. Sophia's eyes widened. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do, Hayes said, and because I can afford it now. My father would never accept charity. It's not charity. It's business, real business. Fair price for good timber? Sophia stood abruptly, pacing the small clearing. He's desperate enough that he might agree, but the Wilsons won't simply walk away. Judge Wilson has political aspirations. Being publicly rejected would humiliate him. Hayes watched her, admiring the quick intelligence in her eyes as she worked through the problem. Then we need to make it impossible for them to press their claim, he said. How? Hayes hesitated, then spoke the words that would change both their lives forever. Marry me instead. Sophia froze mid-step, staring at him in shock. I beg your pardon? A marriage of convenience, Hayes clarified quickly. On paper only, you'd have your own cabin on my property, complete independence. Once your father's situation improves or you decide what you truly want, we could quietly dissolve the arrangement. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. Hayes stood, meeting her incredulous gaze. Think about it practically. Your father can't force you to marry Wilson if you're already my wife. I get my timber deal. You get your freedom and time to plan your future. Sophia shook her head in disbelief. This is madness. We barely know each other. I know enough, Hayes replied steadily. I know you're intelligent, principled, and brave enough to flee rather than submit to a loveless arrangement. That tells me you're someone worth helping. And what do you truly get from this arrangement, Mr. Kincaid? Sophia asked suspiciously. I find it hard to believe you're proposing marriage solely out of the goodness of your heart. Hayes smiled slightly. I admit there are benefits for me. Your father's timber is the best in the county, and I need it for my expansion. Also, he added with unexpected candor, having a wife, even in name only, would stop Mrs. Holbrook from trying to match me with her daughters at every social event. A surprised laugh escaped Sophia's lips before she could suppress it. Mrs. Holbrook is rather persistent. Relentless, Hayes agreed, encouraged by her response. Look, I know it's an unusual proposition, but it's the only solution I can see that gives you immediate protection from the Wilsons while preserving your long-term freedom." Sophia turned away, gazing toward the distant mountains. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but resolute. "If, and I stress, if I were to consider such an arrangement, I would need certain guarantees." "Name them." "Complete independence. My own space, as you suggested. Freedom to pursue my own interests and education. And a clear understanding that this is temporary, 1 year at most, after which we reassess." Hayes nodded. "Agreed. I'd add only that we present a united front in public. People will talk regardless, but we shouldn't give them cause to question the validity of our arrangement." "And my father? How do we convince him?" "We don't ask his permission," Hayes said firmly. "We inform him of our decision and present him with the business arrangement separately. He can accept my offer for the timber and loan or not. But his acceptance isn't a condition of our marriage." Sophia studied him intently, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motives. Finding none, she drew a deep breath. "This is absolutely insane." "Desperate times," Hayes replied simply. After another long moment, Sophia nodded decisively. "Very well, Mr. Kincaid. It seems I'm in the market for a husband after all, just not the one my father selected." Dawn broke over the Adler ranch as Hayes Kincaid rode in with Sophia beside him. They'd spent the night in separate quarters. Sophia in the line shack, Hayes under the stars after agreeing to their unorthodox plan. Now, as the household stirred to life, they prepared to announce their intentions. Franklin Adler burst from the house as they dismounted, relief and fury battling for dominance on his weathered face. "Sophia, where in God's name have you been? Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" "I needed time to think, Father," Sophia replied calmly, though Hayes could see the tension in her shoulders. Franklin's gaze darted to Hayes, suspicion darkening his features. "Kincaid? You found her and didn't bring her straight back?" "Mr. Kincaid respected my wishes," Sophia interjected before Hayes could respond. "Which is more than I can say for you, Father." "Now see here," Franklin began, but Hayes stepped forward. "Mr. Adler," he said firmly, "I've come with 2 matters to discuss. First, a business proposition regarding your timber rights and a potential loan. Second, and more importantly, I've asked your daughter to marry me, and she has accepted." Franklin's jaw dropped. "What in tarnation are you talking about?" "Sophia's promise to Emmett Wilson. The papers are being signed today." "No, Father," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the color rising in her cheeks. "I never agreed to that arrangement. You did, without my consent." "This is ridiculous," Franklin sputtered. "Kincaid, I don't know what game you're playing." "No game, sir," Hayes interrupted. "I have the means to offer Sophia a comfortable life and the respect she deserves. The Wilson arrangement is unnecessary." Franklin's face reddened dangerously. "Unnecessary? They're clearing my debts. Wilson's already spreading word about the wedding. I'll be ruined if I back out now." "I'm prepared to purchase your timber rights at fair market value," Hayes countered, "and extend a loan at reasonable interest to help with your most pressing obligations. Business, pure and simple." "And if I refuse?" "Then you refuse," Hayes said simply. "But Sophia and I will marry regardless. Today, before the Wilsons arrive." Franklin looked to his daughter, perhaps truly seeing her determination for the first time. "Sophia, be reasonable. You hardly know this man." "I know he offered me a choice," she replied quietly, "which is more than you did." A tense silence fell over the yard. Miguel and the other ranch hands had gathered at a respectful distance, watching the confrontation unfold. Finally, Franklin's shoulders slumped in defeat. "The Wilsons will raise hell." "Let them," Hayes said. "Judge Wilson may have influence, but even he can't force a woman to marry against her will when she's already wed to another." Franklin studied Hayes with narrowed eyes. "And what do you really want with my daughter, Kincaid? Your ranch is prospering. You could have your pick of suitable girls. I want a partner, not a possession, Hayes replied honestly. Your daughter is the most intelligent, principled woman I know. Any man would be fortunate to have her as his wife. Sophia glanced at him, surprised by the genuine admiration in his voice. Franklin wasn't entirely convinced. This seems mighty convenient timing. Perhaps it is, Hayes acknowledged. But my offer stands. We can discuss the business details after the ceremony. Franklin looked between them, clearly calculating his limited options. The Wilsons will be here by noon. Then we should find Reverend Taylor immediately, Sophia said firmly. 2 hours later, in the small white church at the edge of Silver Creek, Sophia Adler became Sophia Kincaid in a brief ceremony witnessed only by Miguel Franklin and Mrs. Taylor, the Reverend's wife. Sophia wore her Sunday best, a simple blue dress that brought out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. Hayes had donned a clean shirt and his least-worn coat, his dark hair still damp from a hasty washing. As they exchanged vows, Sophia was struck by the solemnity in Hayes's expression. For a marriage of convenience, he seemed to take the promises remarkably seriously. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Hayes hesitated only briefly before leaning down to place a chaste kiss on her lips, their first physical contact beyond a handshake. The moment was interrupted by the church door banging open. Judge Wilson stood framed in the doorway, his son Emmett at his shoulder, both men's faces contorted with fury. "What is the meaning of this?" the judge demanded, striding down the aisle. "Adler, we had an agreement." "You're too late, Judge," Franklin said, a hint of satisfaction creeping into his voice now that the deed was done. "My daughter is already married." "Married?" Emmett sputtered, his pale face flushing an unhealthy shade of purple. "This is preposterous. We have a contract." "You had a conversation," Hayes corrected calmly, placing himself slightly in front of Sophia. "No contract involving Miss Adler, Mrs. Kincaid now was ever signed by her." Judge Wilson's cold eyes assessed Hayes. "Kincaid, I should have known. Always too big for your britches. What did you offer Adler to steal this deal from under us?" "He didn't steal anything," Sophia interjected, moving to stand beside Hayes. "I made my own choice." "A woman's choice means nothing without her father's consent," the judge sneered. "The law might surprise you on that point, Judge," Hayes replied evenly. "Especially when the woman in question is of age and the marriage is already performed by a licensed minister." The judge's jaw worked as he struggled to control his temper. "This isn't over, Kincaid. I have influence in this territory. You'll regret making an enemy of me." "I'm not looking to make enemies," Hayes said, "just to start my married life in peace. Mr. Adler and I still have business to discuss regarding timber rights. Perhaps you and your son would like to join us at the hotel for a celebratory meal afterward?" The transparent attempt at pacification only inflamed the Wilsons further. Emmett stepped forward, jabbing a finger toward Sophia. "You'll regret this choice, miss. Kincaid may have money now, but he's still just a cowboy who got lucky. You could have been a judge's daughter-in-law." Sophia lifted her chin. "I'd rather be a cowboy's wife than a judge's possession." Emmett recoiled as if slapped. The judge placed a restraining hand on his son's arm, his cold smile not reaching his eyes. "Congratulations on your hasty nuptials. I trust you'll be very happy for however long it lasts." With that parting shot, he turned on his heel, dragging his sputtering son from the church. As the door slammed behind them, Sophia released a shaky breath. Hayes's hand found hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "It's done," he said quietly. "They can't touch you now." Franklin approached, looking both relieved and troubled. "The judge isn't a man to cross lightly. He'll make trouble if he can." "Let him try," Hayes replied. "Now, shall we discuss that timber contract?" By sunset, Sophia found herself riding beside Hayes toward the Double K Ranch, her few possessions packed in saddlebags. The business arrangement with her father had been concluded swiftly, Hayes offering fair terms that would ease Franklin's immediate financial crisis without solving all his problems. It was, as Hayes had promised, a genuine business transaction, not charity. The double K came into view as they crested a gentle rise. Sophia caught her breath at the sight. Unlike her father's ramshackle operation, Hayes's ranch spoke of careful planning and prosperity. The main house was modest but well built, with a wide porch and glass windows. Several outbuildings stood in good repair, and in the distance, fat cattle grazed on lush pasture. "It's lovely," she said honestly. "Thank you," Hayes replied, genuine pride in his voice. "7 years of work, but it's finally becoming what I envisioned." As they approached, a tall, lanky man emerged from the barn, waving a greeting. "That's Earl, my foreman," Hayes explained. "He's been with me since I claimed the land." "Good man, though he talks your ear off if you let him." Earl met them at the hitching post, his weathered face breaking into a wide grin. "Boss, didn't expect you back so soon, and with company, no less." He tipped his hat to Sophia. "Madam." "Earl, this is Sophia," Hayes said, dismounting and moving to help her down. "My wife." Earl's mouth fell open comically. Did you say wife?" "As of this morning," Hayes confirmed, a hint of amusement in his voice at his foreman's shock. "Well, I'll be—" Earl shook his head in amazement. "Left yesterday a bachelor. Back today a married man. That's moving faster than a jackrabbit with a coyote on its tail." He extended a hand to Sophia. "Welcome to the Double K, Mrs. Kincaid. Reckon this explains why the boss has been fixing up the old cabin these past weeks." Hayes cleared his throat. "Would you see to the horses, Earl? I'd like to show Sophia around before dark." "Sure thing, boss." Earl took the reins, still looking bewildered but pleased. "Betty's got supper almost ready in the cookhouse. I'll tell her to set 2 plates in the main house tonight." As Earl led the horses away, Sophia gave Hayes a questioning look. "The old cabin?" Hayes nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "I've been restoring the original homesteader's cabin on the property. It's small but comfortable, with its own garden plot. I thought, well, I've been thinking it would make a good guest house, or maybe a place for a schoolteacher someday, when there are enough children in the area. And now? Now it's yours, if you want it," he said. "As we agreed, your own space." Sophia studied him thoughtfully. "You've been planning for the future." "Trying to," Hayes acknowledged. "A ranch needs more than cattle to thrive. It needs community, education. The nearest school is 20 miles away." This glimpse into Hayes's vision for his land revealed more than hours of conversation might have. He wasn't just building a profitable business, he was creating a foundation for something lasting. Hayes showed her the main house first, a practical space with a large kitchen, a comfortable sitting room with bookshelves, and 3 bedrooms upstairs. Everything was clean and functional, if sparse in decoration. "It's not fancy," Hayes said apologetically. "My mother always said a house needs a woman's touch to become a home. I never saw the need for curtains and such when it was just me." "It's practical," Sophia observed. "That has its own appeal." From there they walked to what would be her cabin, set about 200 yards from the main house, close enough for safety, far enough for privacy. Hayes had clearly put significant work into the structure. The roof was new, the windows recently glazed, and the interior freshly whitewashed. A small stone fireplace dominated one wall, and simple but sturdy furniture filled the space. "The bedding is clean," Hayes said, seeming suddenly awkward. "There's a garden plot out back that gets good sun. And, well, you can change anything that doesn't suit you." Sophia turned slowly, taking in what would be her new home. It was humble but offered something her father's larger house had increasingly lacked: freedom. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "It's more than I expected." Hayes visibly relaxed. I'm glad you approve. I should let you get settled. Would you like to take supper in the main house tonight, or would you prefer to eat here? The consideration in the question touched her. The main house, I think. I should meet your staff properly as your wife? Hayes nodded. I'll come for you in an hour then. Left alone, Sophia sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the past 24 hours finally catching up with her. By all rights, she should be terrified newly married to a man she barely knew, miles from everything familiar. Yet instead of fear, she felt an unexpected sense of possibility. She unpacked her few belongings, arranging them in the small space. Her books, precious possessions she'd refused to leave behind, she placed carefully on the shelf beside the bed. When she was finished, she washed her face in the basin of fresh water Hayes had provided and changed into her one other good dress. Hayes arrived precisely when promised, knocking politely on her door. He'd changed as well, into clean trousers and a fresh shirt, his dark hair still damp from washing. "Ready?" he asked when she opened the door. "As I'll ever be," she replied honestly. They walked toward the main house in companionable silence, the setting sun painting the landscape in gold and amber. In the distance, cattle lowed softly, and somewhere a night bird began its evening song. "It's peaceful here," Sophia observed. "Most days," Hayes agreed. "Though when we're branding or driving cattle, it's anything but quiet." At the main house, they were greeted by Betty, the cook, a robust woman in her 50s who eyed Sophia with frank curiosity but welcomed her warmly. "Never thought I'd see the day Hayes Kincaid took a wife," she declared, setting a hearty meal of roast beef and potatoes before them. "He's been married to this ranch since he first staked his claim." "It was rather sudden," Sophia admitted. "The best decisions often are," Betty replied with a wink. "My Harold proposed on Tuesday, and we were wed by Friday. That was 30 years ago, and I never regretted a day." After Betty withdrew to the kitchen, Hayes and Sophia ate in silence for several minutes, both acutely aware of their unusual situation. "Your staff seems fond of you," Sophia finally said. "We've been through a lot together," Hayes replied. "The first few years were hard. Blizzards, drought, rustlers. Earl and Betty stuck with me when I couldn't always pay their wages on time. That inspires loyalty." "So does treating people fairly," Hayes said. "Something your father understood before times got tough." The mention of her father sobered Sophia. "Do you think he'll manage? With the loan and timber sale?" Hayes considered the question carefully. "If he's smart with the money and works hard, yes. The land is good. It just needs proper management." "He's been lost since Mother died," Sophia said quietly. "They were true partners. He relied on her judgment more than anyone knew." "Grief can cloud a man's thinking," Hayes acknowledged, "but that doesn't excuse what he tried to do to you." "No," Sophia agreed. "It doesn't." They finished the meal discussing practical matters, the ranch's daily rhythms, local families, the nearest town for supplies. It was an oddly domestic conversation for two virtual strangers bound in matrimony. When they finished, Hayes walked Sophia back to her cabin, a lantern lighting their way through the gathering darkness. "I hope you'll be comfortable," he said as they reached her door. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." "I will, thank you." Sophia hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind all evening. "What do we tell people about our arrangement?" "The truth, as far as it goes," Hayes replied. "That we married quickly but with full intention of building a life together. The details remain private." Sophia nodded slowly. "And when the year is up?" Hayes's expression grew serious in the lantern light. "That will be your decision, Sophia. I meant what I said about this being your chance at freedom. If, after a year, you wish to move on to that women's college your friend wrote about, or elsewhere, I won't stand in your way. And if the Wilsons are still causing trouble, Then we reassess, he said simply. One step at a time. Sophia studied his face, honest, steadfast, and unexpectedly kind. You're a good man, Hayes Kincaid. A slight smile touched his lips. I try to be. Good night, Mrs. Kincaid. Good night, husband, she replied, testing the word that still felt foreign on her tongue. As she watched him walk back toward the main house, Sophia wondered what the coming year would bring and why the thought of its end already gave her a strange pang of regret. Days turned into weeks as summer ripened toward autumn on the Double K Ranch. Sophia gradually found her place in the rhythms of ranch life, establishing routines that carved out independence while contributing to the household. She took over the ranch accounts, discovering a talent for numbers that Hayes readily acknowledged, and began cataloging his modest library, supplementing it with books ordered from Denver. The cabin became truly hers, brightened with wildflowers, herbs from her growing garden, and the colorful quilt Betty helped her stitch during evening gatherings in the main house. Hayes respected her space completely, never entering without invitation. Yet he made a point of walking with her each evening after supper, discussing the day's events or simply enjoying comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains. Their arrangement remained chaste, but Sophia found herself increasingly aware of Hayes as more than her business partner in this unusual marriage. She noticed the strength in his hands as he worked with the horses, the quiet authority he commanded among his men, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed at Earl's outlandish stories. For his part, Hayes discovered his ranch running more smoothly with Sophia's organized mind overseeing the accounts and schedules. Her suggestions for improvements were practical and often brilliant, like establishing regular correspondence with the railroad agent in Denver, ensuring they received advance notice of cattle price fluctuations. One evening in late September, Sophia was returning from the garden with a basket of late vegetables when she heard raised voices from the corral. Approaching cautiously, she found Hayes confronting a man she didn't recognize, tall, expensively dressed, with the haughty bearing of someone used to getting his way. My offer is more than generous, Kincaid, the stranger was saying. Name your price. Everyone has one. Not for this land, Matthews, Hayes replied firmly. The Double K isn't for sale at any price. Don't be a fool, Matthews sneered. The railroad's coming through. This valley will be worth 10 times what I'm offering once construction begins. All the more reason to keep it, Hayes said. Now, I believe our business is concluded. Matthews noticed Sophia hovering nearby and gave her an appraising look that made her skin crawl. Your wife, I presume. Perhaps she can make you see reason. Women usually understand the value of money better than stubborn men. Before Hayes could respond, Sophia stepped forward. My husband makes his own decisions, Mr. Matthews, but if he were asking my opinion, I'd tell him that some things are worth more than money. Matthews's face darkened. Charming. You found a woman as obstinate as yourself, Kincaid. He mounted his horse with a fluid motion that spoke of wealth and privilege. Consider my offer. It won't remain open indefinitely. As Matthews rode away, Sophia turned to Hayes. Who was that? Edward Matthews, railroad investor and land speculator, Hayes explained, his jaw tight with lingering anger. He's been buying up property all through the territory, anticipating the new spur line. He seems unaccustomed to hearing no. Men like Matthews rarely hear it, Hayes agreed. He's used to getting his way through money or intimidation. Is his offer truly as generous as he claims? Hayes looked at her thoughtfully. In pure dollars? Yes. But this land is worth more to me than whatever figure he quotes. I built something here. Something that matters. Sophia nodded, understanding completely. Some things aren't for sale. Hayes's expression softened as he studied her face. You understand that better than most. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings, until Earl called from the barn about a colicky horse, breaking the spell. That night, Sophia lay awake in her cabin, contemplating the strange turn her life had taken. 3 months ago, she'd been desperate to escape a loveless marriage arranged for financial convenience. Now she found herself bound to a man who'd offered her freedom, yet increasingly, she wondered what it might be like if their arrangement were more than a practical solution to a desperate problem. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Sophia was in the main house, reviewing supply orders with Betty, when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Through the window she spotted her father's wagon, with Franklin himself at the reins and Miguel beside him. Hayes emerged from the barn to greet them as Sophia stepped onto the porch, curious and slightly apprehensive. She hadn't seen her father since the wedding, though Hayes had ridden over twice to check on the timber cutting and loan repayment. Franklin looked older, more careworn, but there was a clarity in his eyes that had been missing during those desperate days before her marriage. He removed his hat as he approached the porch where Sophia stood. "Daughter," he said, his voice gruff with emotion, "you're looking well?" "Hello, father," she replied cautiously. "This is a surprise." "Figured it was time," he said, glancing at Hayes, who stood respectfully to the side. "Brought some things your mother would have wanted you to have? Wedding presents, of sorts. Late, I know." Miguel and Earl began unloading several items from the wagon: her mother's rocking chair, a trunk of linens, and a beautiful oak writing desk that had been her grandmother's. "We've been clearing out the big house," Franklin explained. "I'm moving into the foreman's cabin. Too much space for just one old man." "Moving?" Sophia asked, confused. "What about the ranch?" Franklin exchanged a look with Hayes. "Sold most of it. Kept the house and 20 acres, enough for a decent retirement." "You sold? To whom?" "Matthews," Hayes answered quietly. "The railroad man." Sophia stared at her husband in shock. "You knew about this?" "Your father approached me for advice last week," Hayes explained. "I told him it was his decision to make." Franklin nodded. "Got a fair price. Paid off all the debts, with some left over." "The land's changing, Sophia. Big operations, railroad coming through. I'm too old to adapt." He straightened his shoulders proudly. "But I'm not broke anymore. And I didn't need to sell my daughter to manage it." The pointed statement hung in the air between them, as close to an apology as Franklin Adler was likely to offer. "I'm glad, father," Sophia said sincerely. "Will you stay for dinner?" The invitation bridged some of the distance between them. As the men carried her mother's belongings to her cabin, Sophia felt a chapter closing, not just in her father's life, but in her own. The crisis that had precipitated her marriage was officially over. That evening, after Franklin and Miguel departed with promises to visit again soon, Sophia found Hayes on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset with a thoughtful expression. "You knew my father was selling to Matthews, yet you refused to sell your own land," she said, settling into the chair beside him. Hayes nodded. "Different circumstances, different choices. Thank you for not influencing his decision. It means something that he found his own solution. Your father's a proud man. He needed to solve his own problems in the end." They sat in companionable silence as the sky deepened from gold to purple. Finally, Sophia spoke the question that had been growing in her mind all day. "Where does this leave us, Hayes? Our arrangement was predicated on protecting me from the Wilsons and helping my father through his financial crisis. Both situations are now resolved." Hayes turned to look at her, his expression serious in the fading light. "That's entirely up to you, Sophia. As I said from the beginning, you have choices now." "What if—" she began, then hesitated, gathering her courage. "What if I'm no longer certain our arrangement should remain merely practical?" Hayes went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that these past months have shown me what a true partnership could be," Sophia said quietly. "You've given me freedom, respect, and friendship. I've found myself wondering what more might be possible between us." Hayes reached across the space between their chairs, taking her hand in his. "I've wondered the same thing," he admitted. "But I didn't want to pressure you. Your independence was the whole point of our arrangement." "Independence doesn't have to mean solitude," Sophia replied, curling her fingers around his. "Perhaps we could explore what our marriage might become, if it were more than a practical solution." Hayes's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I'd like that very much, Sophia." The following day brought unexpected developments that would test their evolving relationship. Hayes was inspecting a broken fence line with Earl when one of the young ranch hands came galloping across the pasture. "Riders coming," the boy called. "Looks like the sheriff and Judge Wilson." Hayes straightened, exchanging a concerned glance with Earl. "Trouble?" "Only one way to find out," Earl replied grimly. They rode back to the main house to find Sheriff Miller, Judge Wilson, and two other men Sophia didn't recognize, waiting in the yard. Sophia had emerged from her cabin at the commotion and stood uncertainly on the porch. Hayes dismounted smoothly, handing his reins to the ranch hand. "Sheriff, Judge, what brings you to the Double K?" Sheriff Miller looked uncomfortable. "Official business. Hayes, these gentlemen are from the Territorial Land Office." Judge Wilson stepped forward, undisguised satisfaction on his face. "Mr. Kincaid, these officials are here to investigate allegations of fraudulent land claims in this region, specifically, claims that may have been secured through improper means." Hayes's expression remained impassive. "My land claim is properly filed and has been worked continuously since I staked it, as the sheriff can attest." "Nevertheless," one of the officials interjected, "we have information suggesting irregularities. We'll need to review your documentation." "This is harassment," Sophia said, moving to stand beside Hayes. "My husband's claim is legitimate." Judge Wilson's cold eyes fixed on her. "Mrs. Kincaid. Or should I say, Miss Adler? That's another matter. We're investigating the legitimacy of your hasty marriage." Hayes's jaw tightened. "Our marriage was performed legally by Reverend Taylor and is properly registered." "A marriage undertaken solely to circumvent a prior agreement might be viewed as fraudulent," the judge replied smoothly, "particularly when the bride's father confirms it was arranged suddenly to prevent another union." Sophia felt ice in her veins. "My father said that?" "He clarified certain details when questioned," Judge Wilson said. "Under oath, of course." "This is outrageous," Hayes said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Sheriff, you can't possibly support this." Sheriff Miller shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just here to keep the peace, Hayes. The land office has jurisdiction in claim disputes." "I'll need to see all your paperwork, Mr. Kincaid," the second official said. "Claim filings, improvements documentation, proof of continuous occupation." "And we'll need to interview you and Mrs. Kincaid separately," the first added, "regarding the circumstances of your marriage." Hayes's hand found Sophia's, squeezing gently. "My documents are in order and available for inspection. As for our marriage, you're welcome to question us together or separately. The answers won't change." For the next 3 hours, the officials combed through Hayes's meticulous records while the sheriff stood by awkwardly. Judge Wilson remained outside, his satisfaction evident as the investigation proceeded. Sophia and Hayes were indeed questioned separately, each providing consistent accounts of their relationship truthful as far as they went, omitting only the initially pragmatic nature of their arrangement. When the officials finally emerged from the house, their expressions were frustrated rather than triumphant. "Your land documentation appears to be in order, Mr. Kincaid," the senior official admitted reluctantly, "though we may require additional verification from the original land office in Denver." "By all means," Hayes replied evenly. "You'll find everything in perfect order." Judge Wilson's face darkened. "And the marriage investigation?" The second official shrugged. Both parties confirm they married voluntarily with intent to establish a household. The minister's documentation is proper. There's no basis for invalidation that I can determine. This is absurd, the judge sputtered. The timing alone is not grounds for invalidation, the official interrupted firmly. Judge Wilson, while we respect your position, the evidence doesn't support your allegations. As the officials prepared to depart, Hayes approached the sheriff. This wasn't coincidence, was it? Wilson's been planning this since our wedding. Sheriff Miller had the grace to look ashamed. He's been making inquiries for weeks. I tried to warn you when I could. And my father? Sophia asked. What did he really say? Nothing that helped Wilson's case, the sheriff assured her. Franklin refused to claim the marriage was anything but legitimate. Said his daughter made her choice, and he respected it. Relief washed through Sophia at this unexpected affirmation from her father. As the unwelcome visitors rode away, Judge Wilson turned in his saddle. This isn't over, Kincaid, not by a long shot. When they were alone again, Sophia leaned against Hayes, suddenly exhausted. I never imagined he'd go to such lengths. Men like Wilson can't stand being thwarted, Hayes said, his arms steady around her shoulders. But he's fighting a losing battle. Our marriage is legal, my claim is solid, and he has no real power over either. What did you tell them? Sophia asked. About why we married so quickly? A hint of a smile touched Hayes's lips. The truth. That I'd admired you from afar for years but never found the courage to court you properly. When I learned about Wilson's arrangement, I realized I might lose my chance forever, and finally declared myself. Sophia looked up at him in surprise. That's remarkably close to the truth in some ways. The best lies always are, Hayes replied, then amended. Not that I consider it a lie anymore. That evening, after the excitement had settled, Hayes walked Sophia to her cabin as usual. At the door, he hesitated. Would you like to have dinner at the main house tomorrow night? Just the two of us? He asked. Betty's offered to cook something special, and then visit her sister in town. Sophia recognized the invitation for what it was, a step toward transforming their arrangement into something more genuine. I'd like that very much. Hayes smiled, the warmth in his eyes making her heart beat faster. Until tomorrow, then. He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her lips, brief but full of promise, before turning to walk back to the main house. Sophia watched him go, a sense of possibility unfurling within her. Their marriage had begun as a practical solution to an impossible situation, but it was becoming something neither of them had anticipated: a true partnership based on mutual respect, growing affection, and perhaps something deeper still. The following evening unfolded like a dream. Sophia wore her best dress, a deep green that complemented her honey-brown hair, and found the main house transformed. Hayes had cleared the large table from the dining room, replacing it with a smaller one set for two, adorned with wildflowers and candles. The aroma of Betty's special roast filled the air, and soft music played from the piano in the corner, where Hayes had placed a music box he'd apparently ordered from Denver. Hayes himself had clearly made an effort, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark suit that highlighted the breadth of his shoulders. His eyes widened appreciatively when she entered. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, Sophia replied, suddenly shy despite the months they'd spent in each other's company. You look quite handsome yourself. Dinner progressed with easy conversation and lingering glances, the candles casting a warm glow as dusk settled outside. Hayes spoke of his dreams for the ranch, not just as a successful business, but as the heart of a community. Sophia shared her own aspirations for establishing a small school on the property, perhaps teaching the children of ranch hands and neighboring homesteaders. I've been thinking about that corner parcel near the creek, Hayes said. It would make a fine location for a schoolhouse. Sophia looked at him in surprise. You're serious about this? Completely, he affirmed, Education matters, and you clearly have a gift for it. I've seen how you work with Miguel's nephews when they visit. The conversation flowed naturally from shared dreams to personal histories. Hayes spoke of his parents, his father, a failed prospector who died chasing silver, his mother, a strong woman who'd taught him the value of hard work and integrity before succumbing to fever when he was 17. She would have liked you, he said softly. She always said I needed someone who'd challenge me, not just agree with everything I said. Sophia laughed. Well, I certainly qualify on that count. After dinner, Hayes offered his hand. Would you care to dance? Here? Sophia asked, glancing around the modest room. Why not? He wound the music box again, its tinkling melody filling the space. I'm not particularly skilled, but I promise not to step on your toes too often. As they moved together in the small clearing between furniture, Sophia felt the last of her reservations melting away. Hayes held her respectfully, but close enough that she could feel the solid warmth of him, his hand steady at her waist. I never expected this, she admitted, looking up at him. When I agreed to your proposal, I thought we were making a practical arrangement. I never imagined that it could become real, he finished when she trailed off. She nodded. Is that what's happening, Hayes? Is this becoming real? He stopped dancing, his hands still holding her gently. It's been real for me for some time now, Sophia. I just didn't want to pressure you. And if I said I felt the same way? His eyes darkened with emotion. Then I'd say I'm the luckiest man in the territory. Sophia reached up, her hand cupping his cheek. I think perhaps we're both fortunate. When Hayes kissed her this time, there was nothing brief or tentative about it. It was a kiss that spoke of longing finally acknowledged, of possibilities unfolding between them. Sophia responded with equal fervor, her arms winding around his neck as the music box played on, forgotten. Later, as Hayes walked her back to her cabin through the star-filled night, their hands entwined, Sophia made a decision. I don't think I need the cabin anymore, she said quietly as they reached her door. Hayes looked down at her, a question in his eyes. I mean, she clarified, I don't need to sleep separately. Not anymore. If you feel the same way. His answer was in the tenderness with which he gathered her close, in the reverence of his kiss, and in the whispered words against her hair. I've been hoping you'd say that. The seasons turned, autumn yielding to winter's embrace. The Double K thrived under their joint stewardship, Hayes's practical knowledge of ranching complemented perfectly by Sophia's organizational skills and educational background. Together, they weathered blizzards, celebrated Christmas with the ranch hands and neighboring families, and began construction on a small schoolhouse that would open in the spring. Judge Wilson made one more attempt to cause trouble, filing a formal complaint with the territorial governor about Hayes's land claim. The complaint was summarily dismissed when the original land office records confirmed every detail of Hayes's filing. Shortly afterward, the judge announced he was retiring from the bench and moving to San Francisco, a development that brought quiet relief to many in the territory. On a clear February morning, Hayes found Sophia in their bedroom, standing before the mirror with an unreadable expression. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her temple. What has you so pensive this morning? He asked. Sophia met his eyes in the reflection, a smile slowly blossoming on her face. I was just thinking about how much has changed in less than a year. Last February, I was desperately reading college prospectuses and dreaming of escape. Now, Hayes prompted when she paused. She turned in his arms, facing him directly. Now I'm exactly where I want to be, with the man I love. She took his hand, guiding it to rest against her abdomen. And in a few months, we'll have even more to be thankful for. Hayes stared at her, comprehension dawning slowly. Are you saying? Sophia nodded, tears of joy shimmering in her eyes. Betty confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a baby, Hayes. The wonder that transformed his face was everything she could have hoped for. Hayes dropped to his knees before her, pressing his cheek against her still flat stomach, his arms encircling her waist. "A baby," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." When he looked up at her, the love shining in his eyes made Sophia's heart swell. "Thank you," he said fervently, "for taking a chance on me, for making this ranch a home, for giving me a family." Sophia stroked his hair, remembering the desperate young woman who'd fled to a line shack less than a year ago, and the honorable man who'd offered her a way out that became a way forward. "When my father tried to marry me off cheap," she said softly, "he didn't understand what I was truly worth." Hayes rose to his feet, cradling her face in his calloused hands. "I knew the moment I found you in that line shack, rifle in hand and chin held high. You're worth everything, Sophia. My whole life. And then some." As spring returned to the Montana Territory, new life blossomed everywhere on the Double K Ranch. The schoolhouse opened its doors with Sophia teaching 3 days a week to the children of ranch hands and neighboring homesteads. Hayes expanded the cattle operation, his breeding stock now sought after throughout the territory. And in their home, preparations were made for the child who would join their family in early summer. One evening in late May, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, a rider approached from the direction of Silver Creek. As he drew closer, Sophia recognized her father's straight-backed form in the saddle. "Papa's coming," she said, using the more affectionate term that had gradually replaced the formal father as their relationship healed. Hayes helped her rise from her chair, her advanced pregnancy making such movements increasingly cumbersome. "I'll put on coffee," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead before heading inside. Franklin Adler dismounted carefully, his movements showing his advancing years. His eyes softened at the sight of his daughter, her hands resting on her rounded belly. "You're glowing, child," he said by way of greeting, "just like your mother when she was carrying you." "I'm feeling well," Sophia assured him, accepting his awkward embrace. "What brings you out this way? We weren't expecting you until next week." Franklin produced a small package from his saddlebag. "Found this while going through some of your mother's things. Thought you should have it now, before the little one arrives." Inside the package, Sophia discovered a delicate silver rattle, clearly an heirloom. "It was yours," Franklin explained, "and your mother's before you. Goes back 4 generations." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she cradled the precious object. "Thank you, Papa. This means so much." "There's a letter, too," he added gruffly. "From your mother. She wrote it before she passed. Asked me to give it to you when you were expecting your first child." Hayes appeared in the doorway, coffee cups in hand, and tactfully retreated when he saw the emotional moment between father and daughter. That night, after Franklin had departed with promises to return for the birth, Sophia sat in bed reading her mother's letter by lamplight. Hayes lay beside her, his hand gently caressing her belly where their child occasionally kicked against his palm. "She knew," Sophia said softly, lowering the pages. "Mama knew I'd find my way, even when things seemed darkest." She turned to Hayes, eyes shining with unshed tears. "She wrote that true worth isn't measured in dollars or status, but in love freely given and received. That I should never settle for less than a man who sees my value." Hayes gathered her close, his strength a comfort as always. "Your mother was a wise woman. She would have loved you," Sophia said with certainty. "Not for your success or your ranch, but for your heart, for the way you value what truly matters." 2 weeks later, after 18 hours of labor that tested Sophia's endurance and Hayes's nerves, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to Betty's eyes as she assisted the midwife. "She's perfect," Hayes whispered, cradling the tiny bundle with awe and terror in equal measure. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and your beautiful eyes." She has your determination, Sophia replied wearily, reaching to trace their daughter's tiny features. The midwife said she's never seen a baby so intent on arriving in her own time, her own way. They named her Elizabeth Hope Kincaid, Elizabeth for Hayes's mother, hope for the future they'd built together from such unlikely beginnings. As summer ripened into harvest time, visitors to the Double K found a tableau that spoke volumes about the nature of true value. Hayes Kincaid, once the territory's most confirmed bachelor, now rocking his infant daughter while discussing ranch business. Sophia, with a book in one hand and a lesson plan in the other, directing the expansion of the schoolhouse. And between them, a love that had transformed a marriage of convenience into the most precious partnership either could have imagined. On the first anniversary of their hasty wedding, Hayes presented Sophia with a proper ring, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, far more elegant than anything available in Silver Creek. I ordered it from San Francisco, he explained as he slipped it onto her finger. I wanted something as extraordinary as you are. Sophia admired the ring's sparkle in the firelight, then looked up at her husband with a smile that still took his breath away. It's beautiful, Hayes, but you know I would have been happy with a simple band. I know, he replied, drawing her into his arms. That's exactly why you deserve more. He kissed her softly, then added with characteristic directness, You're worth everything to me, Sophia. My whole life, and everything in it. As little Elizabeth cooed in her cradle nearby, Sophia rested her head against Hayes's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. And you, she whispered, are worth infinitely more than $600. His laughter rumbled through his chest, and as he held his family close, Hayes Kincaid silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led him to that line shack a year ago, where a determined young woman with a rifle had unwittingly captured his heart and changed his life forever. In the years that followed, the story of their unusual courtship became something of a legend in the territory, how Franklin Adler had tried to marry off his daughter cheap, and how Hayes Kincaid had recognized her true worth from the start. But for Sophia and Hayes, the real story wasn't in how their journey began, but in how they chose to walk the path together, day by day, season by season, building a legacy of love that would endure long after the wild Montana frontier gave way to progress and change. And on summer evenings, when the children were asleep and work was done, they would often sit together on the porch of their expanded home, hands entwined, watching the sun set over the land they both loved, a silent testimony to the truth they'd discovered together, that the greatest treasures in life cannot be bought or sold, only recognized by those wise enough to see beyond the price to the immeasurable value within.